Incoming transmission.
The Klingonese word of the day is Hi.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So, this is a huge victory for the good guys.
Scotty, beam me up.
Resistance is futile. Live long and prosper.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Computer Resume podcast, the show covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. I'm your host, writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. If you thought 7 of 9 was a badass as captain of the Enterprise, wait till you see her stand-up comedy set. Author and New York City's premier Star Trek cosplay comedian, it's Dani Riedel. Yay, Dani. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much, Todd.
Oh, it's good to see you again. We first ran into each other at Barracuda Lounge there with To Proudly Go. It was a fun night.
That was such a fun night. Just from the beginning to end, that was such a fun night. I got there and I knew I had the address right. And it wasn't until a very sweet gentleman with a marvelous handlebar mustache came up behind me and just said, "You're here," and pointed out a black door on a stone wall on the street. Yep. With no signage whatsoever. And I was like, this is going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because that trip was our first trip to New York. So we were just
really?
It was like, oh, it's got to be around here somewhere. And I thought there might be, a logo on a window or a thing on a door, something. And it was just kind of.
Yeah, something businesses put up when they want people to patronize them.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just kind of this nondescript, not labeled door. And there was a small window and I peeked in there. I was like, I think this is it. She goes, "Are they open?" So I grabbed the handle and it opened. I was like, I guess they are. Let's walk in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so let me ask you, let's go back. You've been working in New York as a writer and comedian for how long now?
About a year and a half.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah,
so, you mentioned before we started to roll that you were a big fan of TNG growing up, as am I.
Actually, interestingly, it wasn't exactly growing up.
Really?
I went through so I'm 41 now, and when I was in my early to mid 30s, I went through a difficult time, was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And one night I was just having a rough time and couldn't go to sleep. And I said to my husband, this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, baby, I need to binge watch something. And he was like, try this, and put on TNG. And here I am in my mid 30s and my life changed forever.
Wow. That's quite a story. I've had a couple of veterans on who have admitted that Star Trek is their safe place. It's something.
Oh yeah.
The very hopeful. I mean, it is sci-fi and they're getting into, sticky situations every week, but the overall tone is that it's very hopeful and that we as a people are able to do very complicated theoretical physics in our head at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So let me go back and say, it sounds like Star Trek came after and maybe comedy was there before. Were you a writer before you got into comedy? What's the timeline here?
So I was an author. I have one novel published. I think it's good. It was a classic story. Got great reviews. Didn't make me any money, but I have one novel published, and I like I mentioned, I went through kind of a rough time. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'd been sober for a while, and that's when I wrote my book, and then I relapsed, and then I was continuing to go through a tough time and got into Star Trek. And some of the first jokes that I wrote were Star Trek jokes.
Yeah, out of town.
I told them to my husband and he laughed and he goes, this was probably 5 years ago. Like, I don't know, I guess a little more than 4 years ago, because this was like a couple months before I really started doing stand-up comedy.
Mhm.
And my husband says to me, like, those are funny, but no one's going to get them. If you ever wanted to be a comedian, like, you'd have to tell jokes about things other than Star Trek,
Right.
unless you performed those jokes at a Star Trek convention or something. And we both were, ha 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 ha. Wouldn't that be cool if that was a thing? Flash forward however many years, and I do stand-up comedy at Star Trek conventions.
That's
But
awesome.
back then, you know, I'm getting into writing jokes just to kind of deal with things.
Yeah.
And kind of around the same time, I quit drinking again. And that's when I said, I need a creative outlet. I used to act just as a hobby. I miss being on stage. You know, theater opportunities are very limited if it's not your career. And this was just the perfect art form for me. So I basically did something totally crazy in midlife crisisy, and I quit drinking cold turkey and picked up stand-up comedy, and had no idea that it would go from an alternative to getting drunk every night to a career. But
Wow.
I ended up getting started in Philadelphia, and over the pandemic doing a lot of Zoom comedy. And it
Whoa.
was over that period of time that I did a couple of virtual Star Trek conventions.
Oh,
And
wow.
the following year, both of those conventions invited me to come do it in person. And since then, I've just been doing all the cons on the East Coast anyway.
Wow.
And it's been so cool, because not that long ago it was this joke, oh haha, you could only tell that joke at a Star Trek convention. But one thing, you know, moving from Philly to New York is New York just has so many more opportunities to get on stage, but more opportunities to get into your niche, like the viewing parties at Barracuda. That audience got the deepest cut Star Trek jokes that I have ever written. I mean, I won't tell it right now because it's incredibly dirty, but there's one joke where I reference the episode Relics.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember it.
Oh, yes.
It's a pretty deep cut joke. And I had there were two gentlemen, older couple in the front row, who said the punchline with me because they remembered the episode so well. And that's just I love that I don't have to travel to a convention all the time.
Yeah. No, that's great. I have one Star Trek joke, and it's not so much a Star Trek joke as it is me doing my impression of Benjamin Sisko ordering food at a drive-through.
Well, I got to hear it.
It's not good. Let me just go ahead and preface with, like, it does. I've done it. It has never worked.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll give it to you in the after show. I'll give it to you in the after show.
Okay.
So if you want to hear Todd's Benjamin Sisko, you got to support us on Patreon. Anyways, yeah. So let me, and then I promise we will get into Star Trek stuff. But when I have time to talk with comedians, I like to find out the formula, or their personal formula. Did you have a particular structure that you liked as presented by a famous comedian? I don't want to ask, like, well, who your comedic inspirations, but like, everybody kind of finds, like, I like their joke writing style. I think that lends to my skill set, or something along those lines. Did you have any particular style that you liked?
So as far as watching comedy, I really, really enjoy storytelling comedy. So one of my favorite comedians to watch is Jim Jeffries.
He's a good one.
He's brilliant, brilliant writer, brilliant storyteller, manages to keep you in a story, even when he goes out of the story and goes into bits, and then he comes back to the story, and you're like, oh yeah, we're being told a story.
Right.
And I think he influenced me in just, me seeing how entertaining it is when someone lets their natural anger come out in their voice, doesn't try to be an angry comedian, but leans into it.
Right. Right.
And same thing with so Carol Montgomery, who's known for her specials on Showtime, Funny Women of a Certain Age, has been a mentor and inspiration to me. And she's in the same, she's does some storytelling, but definitely just kind of leans into the emotion and no censorship. I'm a dirty comic. I like sometimes I'll get off stage and be like, damn, I think I just made Lenny Bruce look like Mr. Rogers. But so those are the two that I would.
I've always found I really enjoy a good storyteller as well. Again, growing up, this was years and years ago. One of the first comedy albums I had was a Bill Cosby album, and I was impressed. Later looking at the album, there's only 2 tracks. Like he only tells 2 stories, but it fills a set. Like he goes and again, it's not like, oh, there's lulls. No, there's no lulls. Like it's consistently funny throughout. Here more recently, looking at folks like off the top of my head, Mike Birbiglia, great storyteller. His style is leans more towards theatrical, like one-man show. I mean, I know it's a one-man show, but like presentation you know what I mean, as opposed to guys like Jim Jeffries or even Bert Kreischer, who they are the guys you could hear them telling that story in a bar of like, this is the guy at the party, this is the, like, you'll never believe what happened to me, buckle up, here we go, I'm going to take you on this ride, like
versus someone who has a fourth wall.
Exactly. Yeah. And my wife, who does not like comedy.
Really?
She's made that very apparent to me. She's
oh no, wait, now I have to ask, did she like my comments?
Oh yes, she does like you. She's just not she's told, I was like, so I think she's very empathic. So when I finally was just like, what is it? Because I tried for the longest time. I was like, well, maybe you'll like this comic, or maybe you'll like this one, or this one, or this one. She's just like, it's just not for me. I was like, why? Can you articulate why? I was like, and she said, I just want to give them all hugs. She goes, I see through what they're saying and what they're doing, and I just want to give them a hug. I was just like, oh, you understand comedy better than you let on.
For real, I need a hug.
We all do.
I mean, seriously, it seems like a cliche that stand-up comedians but have had traumatic childhoods or have XYZ or ABC, but
yeah,
speaking for myself and most comedians I know, it's hell inside our heads.
Yeah. What's I've said, and I don't know if this is, I don't know if I absorbed this from someone else, but I've always said, look, it takes a special kind of damage to get on stage, to repeatedly get on stage and seek approval from strangers in a bar. Like there's something rotten in Denmark. Like something's not quite right up there. And again, to even when it doesn't go well, be like, see you next week. I'll be back. I'm going to do it again.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, finding Star Trek as your safe place, as your way to sort of ground yourself, it sounds like, of like, to recenter, to refocus, using the narratives to kind of, and again, to re-inspire hope, like Star Trek's always been about that sort of thing. What was it like to then jump from, the TNG era? Because I assume once you finished TNG, you moved on to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, maybe even Enterprise.
I think I went TNG, then went back and watched the original series. And then I went Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Voyager. Did I
That's
miss
interesting.
anything? I don't, and then
No,
obviously everything since.
that is so great because it's kind of, I've seen where people take different tracks of like, oh, my family was big on Deep Space Nine, so Deep Space Nine was the first thing I watched, or the most common ones are TNG or the original series. But it's wild to find like, okay, I found TNG first, and then I went backwards, and then I went forwards, and then I went backwards again. Like to mix up the timeline like that is a lot of. It's really fascinating. It offers
Yeah,
a unique perspective.
when my husband said watch Star Trek The Next Generation,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, shouldn't I watch the original Star Trek first? And he was like, no, you'll like this one better.
Yeah.
You'll like this one better. And my that totally went against my natural inclination, which is to watch things in not timeline order, but chronological order.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't even know Enterprise existed to give me the option of watching it in timeline order.
Right.
But I'm glad I did it that way. And I think I went kind of out of order just based on like I had a friend who's like, oh, I'm watching Enterprise right now, let's watch it together.
Cool.
But my husband definitely knows me very well and was right to start me on TNG because I needed Jean-Luc Picard in my life, and I needed Commander Riker in my life, although I had him all along in the form of my husband and didn't realize it.
He sounds like a great guy. From everything I heard from you on stage, he sounds like a great guy.
He even looks like Jonathan Frakes. It's great. A little
Here's the thing. My dad kind of looks like Jean-Luc Picard. And it's weird. Like I gravitated towards Jean-Luc because he was the calm, reassuring, but firm voice that I needed as a young man. And here he was in this British actor who oddly looks a little bit like my dad. So like,
that must be so heartwarming then when you see that. Just
so going through, having this unique experience of Trek, basically binge watching a lot of it sounds like right off the bat, which is always kind of fun.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember getting into New Trek and Discovery, and now the shows that are out there streaming?
Oh yeah, and the way that everything links together is so perfect. And I particularly love Strange New Worlds. I mean, so I love, like, say, Lower Decks I love Discovery for what it takes on as far as like social issues, and I love that it after its initial couple seasons took on a life of its own by going way into the future and had these very classic Trek plot lines, but outside of the timeline we know, which I guess gives the writers a lot more freedom. But I love how Strange New Worlds, they nestled that in there so perfectly, that little window of time between the beginning of the show or basically between Pike's last appearance on Discovery, and I'm hoping they'll go all the way up until I hate to say it, but I'd love to see Pike's accident. Just to have the whole story be connected. But the way they did, say, like the season finale of Strange New Worlds, that was some of the most brilliant television writing I've ever seen. Take to Balance of Terror and The Menagerie, like two of the most beloved episodes of the original Star Trek, and deepening their meaning beyond belief. I watched that, and then I went back and watched Balance of Terror and The Menagerie, and then I watched it again, and then I did that again, and every time I would just cry. Like when the tearjerker is when Spock comes in and says something to Pike like, I have a feeling you saved me from something horrible. When you hear that line on the heels of seeing The Menagerie, heartbreaking.
I'll tell you the line. I mean, I don't want to stray too far from New Trek, but I will tell you the line that consistently gets me is right after it's in TNG. It's right after The Best of Both Worlds, the episode Family, where Picard goes back to the chateau and interacts with his brother and breaks down, telling him, everything that just happened. And he and
I
his
should have
brother,
been able to stop them in the
yeah, should have
mud.
been able to stop them. The whole thing. We see this unflappable captain break down, and yeah, but it's at the end where he finally has the catharsis with his brother, and his brother comes to him with the bottle and hands it to him. Says, I'm not going to cry. It's starting to talk about this, Danny. but he says, try not to drink it all. Try not to drink it alone. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yep.
But
Yes.
it gets me every single time because I usually jump from that episode to Generations, where yeah, and seeing that now the family's gone, and he's seeking the life where he didn't drink it alone. But he stayed in Starfleet and the whole thing, and it's just, and to watch him sort of be able to accept it for a second, and you see the smile on his face as he's surrounded by the kids and the Christmas tree and the house and the snow, and it's just, this is it. This is what I really wanted. And then him going, it's not right. It's not real. I have to go back. Like, making that decision was such a hard.
I know.
Anyways,
that episode when so my dad, I've been trying to get my dad into TNG for the longest time, and he really, for some reason, I guess because it's new and it's all the rage, he's dying to watch Picard season 3, and I'm like, you can't you can't do that. So I gave him an abbreviated list of episodes that you like, okay, well, at least you absolutely must watch these TNG episodes. Yeah. And that was definitely on it, because you need that one to know. You need to know Jean-Luc Picard at a certain depth.
Oh yeah. It's so funny and again, I recently went back and watched, as we were gearing up for season 1 of Picard. I went back and I found a list online. I think it might have even been StarTrek.com, where they were like, hey, here's the Picard episodes to watch. And one of them, of course, was Encounter at Farpoint. How can you not start with the first thing? And, so I turned on Encounter at Farpoint. I was like, oh, Picard was kind of a jerk at the beginning of all of this. And
kids.
Yeah. He doesn't like kids. He's kind of a jerk to Riker and the whole thing. But I was just like, okay, well, but again, like, as we get in, you realize, oh, this isn't his first rodeo. He spent like 20 years on the Stargazer, lost his best friend who was married to the woman he loved. Like, I was like, there's a reason for all of this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's,
and it's easy to be a jerk to Riker before he had a beard.
Yeah, that's very true. Listen, as someone who used to work in law enforcement and was not allowed to have this glorious beard, I got treated like I looked like a kid, and people were just, you're not about to tell me what to do. Get out of here.
I'm about to surprise the heck out of you, but I used to be a police cadet.
Get out of town. Really? Oh, that's fun. Where okay, just really briefly, and then we'll get back into Star Trek. Like, give me the bullet points. Like, how did this happen? How long was it? Like,
I was in my early 20s. I was drinking a lot. Life wasn't going well. I just wanted things to change. I had a quarter life crisis, and I tell a joke, which is, I quit my job, and I have a liberal arts degree, so it was a really good bartending job. And it was a very good, very lucrative bartending job. And I just left and went and joined the police academy, and full-time, 6 months, graduated, ended up not becoming a cop. Weird time in life, but got my full law enforcement education, at least the academy part.
Hey, I was at a weird place in my life where it was just, certain things were starting to happen, and, something was going to break. And I was just like, okay, I gotta, for lack of a better term, I gotta sack up. Like, let's go ahead and let's make a big decision here.
That's pretty much right. Yeah.
Yeah. And in one day I went to 2 different places. One was the local county jail and filled out an application. And on my way home, I stopped at the Army recruiter and started that paperwork as well. And the jail called me back first. And I was in law enforcement for the better part of a decade. And it was, yeah, it was, it's a chapter that I'm glad is behind me. I did learn a lot, and some of those skills are applicable to like normal adult humans. Like, hey, write things down when they happen, so that if something shows up, you can go, oh yeah, at this time, at this day, da 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 da. So yeah, attention to detail. That's a good one. So anyways,
yourself to a higher standard thing that a lot of people forget, but
right. So let's jump back into New Trek. You mentioned we talked a little bit about Discovery. What are your overall thoughts on the rest of New Trek, just because they all watch so differently? It's clear that New Trek is very much opened the spectrum of the target audience. Like, Discovery is for those sort of brand new, super gung-ho. Maybe they watched the J.J. Abrams films and they want more. Picard is clearly for those nostalgic folks who wants to see, their favorite characters take one last ride. You want to Lower Decks is clearly for the
Easter eggs.
Yeah, Easter eggs. It's for the hardcore fans. I've always compared Lower Decks to the Lego Batman movie, of just like, go try to find all the Easter eggs. You won't. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
Prodigies, I say it's for kids, but it's for brand new people. It's like, if you've never watched Star Trek before, check this out, because you're going to see it through some fresh eyes. And then Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds is kind of like, if we didn't tick your box, this one's about to, because it does. It hits everything. It's so good. I've always said, like, it's better than it has any reason to be. Like, it shouldn't be this good.
I see Strange New Worlds as kind of, okay, I'll just tell you this real quick. I one thing about living in New York City that's so awesome is I get to go to all these Star Trek screenings. And
so jealous.
One of the handful of that I've gone to recently was it was the first 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds I got to see a week before they aired of season 2. And I broke down in tears on the R train on my way home because Gene Roddenberry and Majel Barrett were not alive to see Ad Astra per Aspera, because that was her character.
Yeah.
It got kicked off in 1964 when Gene Roddenberry wrote the original pilot with Pike and female number 1 played by his later wife Majel Barrett. Like, that got rejected by the network because they said it is not going to be believable to audiences that a female would be that high ranking of an officer. It's fine, you have lieutenant, yeoman, whatever, but there's no way that the second in command would be a woman. So you can either get rid of the alien or the woman, or I think was what I read that they said to Gene Roddenberry. And so he kept Spock and recast her as Nurse Chapel. And number 1 never saw the light of day again until Strange New Worlds. And then to have this episode address what happened to her character for being a woman all those years ago, all these years later. And I think Strange New Worlds is, if Gene Roddenberry had the technology and the sort of social freedom, for lack of a better phrase, that's what he would have. Gene Roddenberry would be so freaking happy with it.
Yeah, I think so too. Looking at the way I pointed it out recently, talking about Star Trek being a mirror, a cautionary tale for our society, and that episode, I think it was season 1, but it was either episode like 2 or 3. Pike beams down into the middle of this political debate and just like, hi, hey, go ahead and load the video package. And like, the footage in that package is from the news very, very recently. And it's that
was episode 1.
Yeah. So we were all just kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, we kind of set all that aside to watch Star Trek. We forgot Star Trek talks about that sort of thing. Like it was like, oh,
That episode is just some of the Star Trekiest Star Trek ever.
yeah,
Just
and
the
so good. Oh, so good.
so good.
Yeah. Oh, so let's dive in a little bit deeper. Here we are at the tail end of season 2 of Discovery. We went through the very dark season 1 where it's just like, hey, mutiny, death, and that's not enough. All right, Mirror Universe, where they definitely mutiny, death a lot.
All the Klingons.
Yeah. Now we're in season 2. There's a big shift. Pike comes along. Hey, I'm not Lorca. Now we're kind of we're unraveling this scientific, biological, technological, time spanning mystery of the Red Angel.
Yeah.
What was it like kind of diving back into this? Like, how did anything unlock in the head of like, oh, I didn't remember that, or oh, this is fun. I forgot all about this. I find that in myself a lot. I've taken a lot of shots to the head, but
I mean, the one thing that I love about learning what we learn about the Red Angel is it's like initially present. I mean, just the word angel, is this very sort of spiritual concept that's defined differently for everybody, and then and they sort of introduce it with this like almost spiritual enigma around it, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, just science.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially with that second episode. I think it's the second episode, or it's either second or third of season 2, New Eden, where they've combined all the religions, and this whole thing centered around the Red Angel that rescued them and took them to a different planet. Like, there's so much going on there. And, Star Trek has never shied away from talking about religion, but it's always been I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that Gene Roddenberry was an atheist. There's a great book out there called The Gospel According to Star Trek, and it's written by Kevin C. Neese. He's a friend of the show. He's come on, and we've talked at length about all of this stuff because I was worried his book was going to be very preachy, and it's not. He's a very studious scholar. He went and analyzed all of those original interviews with Roddenberry. Roddenberry wasn't an atheist. He was against charlatans. He was against the people who preach whatever deity while they're collecting handfuls of money, and that sort of thing. The televangelist, if you will.
Yeah.
That's what he was against. He wasn't against people having faith or believing in anything, but he was also very much about it's the human experience and what that is to be human and be humane to other humans. We started this conversation talking about Star Trek reminds people to, hey, be nice to each other. Like,
right?
Be good people. Like, hey, learn science, learn math, understand your world and the people in that world. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you have faith, that can go with it too. But it's the idea of we are human. So let's understand what it is to be human and be humane to others. Do you have any thoughts about any of that? You started with talking about the nature of the Red Angel, evoking some very distinct imagery. Any further thoughts about that sort of thing? I always find that really fascinating.
So one of the first things I thought of as you were talking, that sort of a parallel was a TNG episode, Who Watches the Watchers?
Yes.
Which this is a society that has, culturally evolved past religion, and they suddenly are confronted with something they don't understand. So the first instinct is this is to be worshipped. So they latch on to Picard as this god, and it takes him all the convincing in the world to he has to really explain, and it the reveal that this thing, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it can't be explained. The Red Angel, the Enterprise D in that episode, they don't understand a couple thousand years of technology that led up to, warp travel. So it's like all of a sudden, oh, look, here's warp travel. Well, it's that whole quote about at some point technology becomes indistinguishable from magic.
Yep.
And that's the same with the Red Angel.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
it's some of the most intense advanced technology that we've seen even on Star Trek, the Red Angel suit.
Yeah.
It has
absolutely.
it has infinite storage, right?
Yeah.
It's essentially indistinguishable from magic.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, because it took up such a big chunk of Discovery's computer system. It was taking some of the brightest minds in the universe a long time to go through it, but all of it fits nice and snug in this little angel suit. Like this is wild.
Yeah.
And we've got so much there's so much going on sort of underneath the general plot. Here in this story, we've got Spock and Burnham trying to very slowly sort of reconcile their relationship, and Spock struggling to understand why all of these things, and Burnham struggling to control the things that are outside of her reach, either physically, mentally, spiritually, or otherwise. And then we've also got these added layers of Section 31 trying to do their thing, and Pike just trying to, okay, I'm not going to focus on my future and knowing that I'm going to die for a while so that I can do this thing. There's a lot going on with everything here. But before we get too much further into this episode, let's get to this week's recap. Brought to you in part by our Patreon supporters, Rev J, Jerry Antimano, Cosmic Crit, Kitty B, and David Willett.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
People think time is precious, but it's not. Time is savage. It always wins.
What we do now, in this moment, has the power to determine the future.
We haven't come this far to lose everything now.
Burn to Discovery. Blow this place to hell.
Burnham awakens in sickbay thinking she'd hallucinated seeing her mom on Esau 4. They tell her that not only is it her mom, but they've got her mission logs too. On the Section 31 ship, Control tells Leland its evil plan as holograms of the main cast. Then it injects him with nanotech, which really hurts a lot.
And on that note, we cue the music.
On Discovery, Burnham reviews her mom's mission logs, which show her escaping Ford 950 years in
The future!
when all life in the galaxy has been wiped out by Control. On the bridge, Tilly reports physics was slowly catching up to them and would soon snap Burnham's mom back to
The future!
On Leland's ship, Control, in possession of Leland's body, tells Georgiou and Tyler enough to throw them off the scent, while still trying to get them to bring the sphere data on board. But Georgiou is suspicious. On Discovery, Burnham continues to review her mom's logs, which say preventing Control from getting the sphere's data has been impossible. Spock enters and reports that Burnham's mom had regained consciousness. As they enter the bridge, Culber reports from the planet that Burnham's mom wanted to talk to the captain, and only the captain. In the ready room, Burnham vents her outrage to Pike, who orders her to stay aboard and watch from the feed. Pike beams down and has a one-on-one with Burnham's wet blanket of a mom. Spock reviews Burnham's mom's mission logs, in which she explains his dyslexia allowed him to understand the visions. Burnham tells Spock she needed to see her mom. Spock suggests they go to Pike together. From Leland's ship, Control, as Leland, prods Tyler to get the job done. Heading to the transporter room, Pike concedes that with as little time as they had remaining, letting Burnham try to reach her mother was the best course of action. Spock quotes Hamlet, and Burnham beams down. Burnham's mom has gone from a wet blanket to a cold shoulder. Stamets estimates 43 minutes before containment field failure. Spock understands Burnham's mom's been trying to find a way to destroy the sphere data. Perhaps there's a reason she failed thus far, and perhaps time itself would provide the answer. Stamets suggests putting the sphere archive into the suit and sending it into
The future!
beyond Burnham's mom's anchor point, and let the micro wormhole take it away forever. Leland, learning of the plan from Tyler, emphasizes to Georgiou they couldn't let that happen. In the Daedalus facility, Burnham's mom and Georgiou have a one-on-one. Georgiou begins secretly transmitting the data to Leland's ship. Leland tells Tyler to monitor the transmission. Burnham's mom tells Georgiou that the AI considered her an unacceptable risk to the larger mission. The exact same words Leland spoke to Georgiou earlier. Burnham and Stamets beam in and tell her they'd modified the transporter to beam her permanently into the present and send the suit ahead. Burnham's mom refuses, saying if the plan fails, Control wins, and no one would be able to stop it. Georgiou contacts Tyler and relays her suspicions regarding Leland. Georgiou deactivates the amplifier, stopping the transmission. Tyler enters Leland's ready room, seeing Control reshape Leland's face. Horrified, Tyler reaches for a phaser. Control is faster and stronger, throwing him through a glass panel, then using a large shard of it to stab him. "You won't win," Tyler warns. Control remarks that Leland said the same thing. Tyler warns Discovery. In the facility below,
There was a firefight!
a blast ricochets off the containment field and knocks Burnham to the ground. Burnham's mom tells them the only way forward now was to destroy the containment field. Without the suit, Control couldn't get the data. But if they do that, Burnham's mom would be yanked back, without the suit. But at least this way, she'd have a chance. Burnham, Stamets, and Nan fire on the power discs, and the containment field fails. Burnham contacts Discovery and tells them to beam them up, then blow this place to hell. Owosakun reports she detects another transporter signal from the facility to the Section 31 ship. Control has escaped. And an escape pod, one life sign, Tyler. In her quarters, Burnham watches one of her mother's mission logs where she promises that she'll come back for her once the time storm passed. At that moment, Spock enters and sets up the 3D chessboard and remarks that the board was Michael's.
I don't care!
So yeah, we see that with everything going on, this is some heavy stuff. The stakes are the highest. Like, and it's not a lot of times it's like, oh, everyone on the ship might die, or everyone on this planet might die, or everyone on Earth might die. Like, no, it's all life.
Life in the universe.
Yeah. Let's take this one chunk at a time. This plot. Any thoughts going into this particular episode, Perpetual Infinity, of what is happening, what's going on, the stakes here, the players involved. Any cursory thoughts now that we're in spoiler territory?
Now that we're in spoiler territory, well, one of the big things is, and you may have to remind me here, when Pike sees his future in the time crystal, is that just before this episode, or is that just that's right around this time, right?
Yeah, we're getting closer to this. Yeah, I think it's coming up. It's coming up. So it's interesting to see him and how he functions before and after that. And this is one of those things that I personally cannot help wondering how Pike would have acted differently if he knew. And it's just,
I don't mean to go off topic, but I imagine it must be just such a challenge as an actor, because you hear so much of not so much, but in certain mysteries, actors will be given a script and like not told if their character is going to live or die, and purposely not told, or if their character is the one who did it, so that it doesn't
Right.
affect how they act. But I don't know. I forget how old Anson Mount is, but he was not watching Star Trek when the Menagerie aired, I guess.
Right,
But
right.
but probably for his entire life, he knew what happened to this character long before he played this character.
Yeah.
And to pull that off, amazing. But
yeah, we're seeing some really fantastic. It's nobody's phoning anything in. Like performance wise, everybody is top of their game.
Yeah.
As much as I love Anson Mountain, I love Anson Mountain. Based off of his opening intro, space, the final frontier. Based off of that, I'd listen to the man read a phone book. Like he's got
Right.
he's got it down. But yeah, and as much as I love Anson Mount, Jason Isaacs last season, like there has been no shortage of amazing recently Academy Award winning Michelle Yeoh as Philippa Georgiou, like kills it every scene she's in. She's amazing. And like again, Tony Award winning Anthony Rapp, like it's all of these people are amazing actors, and they are Doug Jones, who's buried under Wilson Cruz. The list goes on and on. There's nobody's phoning anything in. All of these folks are at the top of their game. And I don't understand. Have you heard a lot of the folks who are just like, Discovery's not for me? I'm like, do you not like fun? Do you not like good acting? Do you what awesome thing don't you like?
I mean, sometimes Discovery has like some really intense action sequences that I guess are so much of Star Trek is, and this is one thing I love about it, and this doesn't make me like Discovery any less, but it's just something I've noticed, is that Discovery was like the first new Star Trek series where they had a lot of like visual effects technology available that they didn't in it for any previous series.
Oh yeah.
So like if you look at even like say the first episode of Discovery, you're just like, holy shit, this is what Star Trek looks like with some production value.
Yeah.
But they do that and still manage to have the plot line quality and the intense dialogue. This episode in particular, it has particularly intense dialogue.
Oh yeah.
Conversations you have to listen to a few times.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. There's so much going on with all of this. So looking at the nature of some of these things, one of the things that because I had watched it initially and I watched it in my own personal rewatch, and then I watched it again today as prepping for the episode, but one of the things that jumped out at me was knowing that I was going to talk to you, knowing that we're comedians, and they focus on this element not only in this episode but a few episodes ago, Spock's dyslexia, and how that actually kind of gave him, what he saw as a human failing actually turned out to be a strength. And I was wondering if you felt that in any particular way, knowing, like we just talked about with stand-up comedy, there's a particular damage that makes people really, really good at something else. I'm trying to be really I'm trying to be really careful about how I choose my words here, but it's getting on stage takes a certain thing that a lot of people don't have, that other people might see as a failing, but in this particular area it's a strength. Have you seen that in yourself and working in comedy?
Oh, I mean, yeah, every day. It's in fact, some of the times I find that I am at my best as a performer are when I'm falling victim to one of my human failings. I'm angry, my feelings are hurt at something that I shouldn't let bother me, or just something has royally ticked me off that day. And Spock, dyslexia, there's the dyslexia, but it's sort of just representative of the human side in general. I'm trying to think of a parallel. Like, it's almost to me like, so I'm Jewish, and I know people who, are maybe, this is probably a bad example, but like, let's say someone was half Jewish and they wanted to hide that side of themselves for whatever reason. Like, there's all these anti-Semites in the world and whatever. Or for some reason, so it's the kind of thing that, Spock being ashamed of his being half human and half Vulcan. He's got the Vulcan side that he's proud of.
Yeah.
And then he's got the human side that's so counter to the Vulcan side, that he sees it as a failing rather than as balance. So I think the real life parallel that I was trying to draw is probably not maybe super relevant. Now that I've talked it out, it's felt more relevant in my head. But Spock's balance becomes a strength without him even realizing it.
Yeah.
Because compared to other Vulcans, he's able to work with humans, which is something we see, like T'Pol, for example, initially struggling with more than Spock did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, looking back at my own childhood, again, a lot of this kind of stemming from Spock interacting with the Red Angel when he was a very young child. I think back to, I was never diagnosed as dyslexic or anything like that, or having any sort of disorders, but I did struggle in school and everything like that. But I wasn't really, the things that I wanted to read were not what my very conservative, very strict religious schooling was going to let me read. I wanted to read Batman comics. I wanted to read, other things. And, my reading comprehension and skill levels suffered because of that, because it was just agony trying to get through the curriculum. And I look back now, as I'm knocking on the door of 40 and looking at, if they'd have recognized my love of storytelling and my desire to learn about XYZ comedy, script writing, acting, and script, all of those types of endeavors, literature and things of that sort, and if I had been encouraged in that sort of thing, it's more of a thought exercise of like, how would my life have been different? What would have the path not taken, and it's it's kind of a dangerous path to take, because then you end up, I've at times been filled with, resentment for, the teachers who didn't recognize it, my parents who didn't encourage it, or, all of these things. I'm like, no, but you're here now. And, being one of, at our open mics here, I'm one of the older guys. I'm one of the old guys. But part of what I bring is I have the perspective of having been married for over a decade. I have the perspective of having worked in law enforcement. I have the perspective of paying a mortgage and other things. I'm past the high school, like college days. Like I'm further along in my life. So I bring that perspective to my performance. And for the guy, I just don't know what to talk about. Go to a museum, man. Like, get out of the house. Like, read a book. I don't know. Like, start experiencing life, and you might find you have something to say about it.
Remember literally anything that's happened to you, and
and then articulate it. Like, it starts there.
Think back to high school about a time when you said, this will be funny in 10 years.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of resentment there, because I do a storytelling bit on stage where I talk about something that happened to me in high school that, and let's be real, when you say this will be funny in 10 years, you kind of already know it's funny. But no, it's healing though, when to talk about that on stage, and to know that probably some of the same people who bullied me for what I'm talking about are now paying money to hear me talk about it. And that's hilarious to me.
Yeah. It's, a little bit of, it's very therapeutic. A lot of, comedians who may or may not be in therapy see the performance on stage as a vein of that therapy, of, being able to take that experience, traumatic or odd or awkward or whatever, and being able to craft it, being able to analyze it like comedians do, and craft it into something that is relatable, that reaches someone else on a particular level and elicits laughter. Like that, the ability to do that, I think, is incredible. Well, first of all, it's incredibly healthy. But secondly, I feel like it's one of the greatest superpowers almost in the world, being able to get laughter out of people. I think there was this is a really weird deep cut, but there is an episode of MacGyver from way back when where
I love that show.
I did too. It was so great. But Mac is dealing with somebody who, kind of works in comedy, and, he's talking about, oh, are they going to think it's funny? And he's like, hey, look, anybody can make you think. It takes a genius to make somebody laugh. And that has stuck with me for a long, long time.
I love that.
And that it may not be like the level of intelligence that gets you, a framed piece of paper with your name in a script font or something like that. But there is a level of empathic intelligence and awareness of the world around you, and being able to relate, being able to articulate better than I am now, being able to articulate your thoughts and feelings to someone else on a level that connects with them. And if you're able to do that one-on-one, that's great. If you're able to do that in a room full of people, now you're a comedian. If that room gets much bigger, now you're a politician. It's a little weird that way, but there's all different kinds of levels and stuff like that. Hell, I think Chris Rock was talking to Jerry Seinfeld in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee of like, we shouldn't be able to talk to rooms full of people. That's a weird thing. That's a really weird thing that we do.
My God, I love it though.
Yeah. There's nothing like it. There really is nothing like it.
It's a different kind of intelligence. Yeah,
it is. It is a very different kind of intelligence. Let's jump back in here. Is there anything else about this episode specifically that sticks out to you in terms of, the A plot, the B plot? We've got the main narrative, we've got the story, and these characters all developing in a particular direction. Anything else that stuck out to you before we move on?
Well, the biggest thing that sticks out to me about this episode in general is sort of the juxtaposition between the A plot and the B plot, because you've got all sentient life in the universe on the line. Like you've literally got freaking, for all intents and purposes, existence is on the line, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got like Michael dealing with orphan issues. So all sentient life in the universe, mommy issues, and both of them are presented with equal intensity.
Oh yeah. It's such an interesting thing. I don't know that I've talked about it a lot here on the show. I lost my mom when I was 19. She got sick. She had this condition called scleroderma, which the word itself means hardening of the tissue. You see it manifest in hands and stuff like that. Mom had it in her lungs. So eventually her lungs just stopped working. And it happened very, very quick. And that was incredibly devastating for me because I didn't get to say goodbye, and all of that stuff. So when I see Burnham waking up from the trauma of quite literally dying to bring her mother to this place, and then her thinking it was a that she hallucinated it, that it was, oh, that's not real. They're like, no, your mom's here. No, she died. She died. That's not,
Died.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
She's died. In that moment, I'm like, oh, I put myself in her Starfleet boots. Like,
Crap, yeah.
how would I react to being like, oh yeah, your mom's in the other room? What?
For real? How
Yeah.
would you? I'm serious. I'm curious. Like that must have hit you differently than anyone.
There, I mean, I've talked with a few folks about supernatural experiences, spirits, the afterlife, and all that stuff. And I do not claim to be an expert or anything like that. All I can tell you is that after my mom passed away, I saw her 4 times. And it was sort of this experience where I'm either asleep and have an out of body experience, or I'm, in my room, headphones on, eyes closed, sort of listening to music, and I feel a presence sort of hug me the way I used to hug her. Different things like that. There's a picture of my mom, very early 1960s, very Mad Men era, black dress, big blonde beehive, the whole thing, and she looks great. She looks like $1 million. Needless to say, mom didn't look that way at the end of her life. But I remember having this, that sweet spot between asleep and awake, and she walked by my bedroom door in the black dress with the big blonde beehive, and I got a sense that she knew I was still struggling with her passing, and she stopped and just did this kind of, she didn't like really pose, but it was just kind of like, look at me, I'm fine, it's gonna be okay. Yeah. And it was just, there's those couple of instances, I think there were 4 in total, but through those 4 instances, just kind of like, it's gonna be okay, like, this is the way of life. Remember them, mourn them for a time, and we move on, we continue to live, and all of these things.
Yeah.
But I can't say that I don't regret, again, just like Burnham, the things that are outside of my control.
Yep.
I would have loved for her to have met my wife. I would have loved for her to see me get sworn in as a police officer. I would have loved to, all of these things, and yeah, it was, all of those missed opportunities, and just kind of, I think what that does in my own head, and then I'll let you talk, I swear. But what it does for me in my own head is just kind of like, hey, they're going to be gone someday. Make sure you make the most of what this is, what's going on now. And it's not necessarily any one particular thing. And I'm not saying like, folks that are toxic in your life, well, okay, let's leave the toxicity out. But, for those folks that are in your life, make sure that they're appreciated, and that you love them, and that you care about them, because someday they will be gone. And that's kind of how I look at this situation with Michael getting the chance to be reunited with her mom, and being able to maybe live a little vicariously through that. I don't know. Any thoughts about any of this? This is some getting into heavy territory here.
It's a heavy episode.
Yeah.
A really heavy episode. I mean, evidence of how heavy it is that all sentient life in the universe is on the line, and I'm sure we're not the only ones who mentally and emotionally go to the other place, because it is more relatable. Well, I was about to say that we've never faced a situation where all sentient life in the universe was on the line, but I think about the state of this planet right now, and I'm not so sure about that, but
might be closer than we think.
And yet these family relationship issues are, especially difficult ones, are so relatable to people that you can put that in there with this massively heavy, larger plot line, and still have your audience latch on to that emotionally. For me, watching the scene where Michael finally like really talks to her mother and just doesn't get what she wants out of the conversation,
Yeah, that's
is
tough.
really heartbreaking for me to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and again, looking at, we talked a little bit about, I mentioned before about, I've had a lot of veterans, come on, and, having worked in law enforcement and worked around, different officers and different parts of their career and things of that nature, there is a sense of, there is something that the job does to you, for better or worse. Yeah, you can learn a lot of great skills and all that stuff, and there's a lot of great things to take away from it at a cost, and that cost is to a degree your faith, your hope, being able to look on the bright side of a lot of situations. And I think that's where Burnham's mom is coming from, of like, I've seen you die 100 times, I'll see you die 100 more. Like,
more.
I think of my father, who's a Vietnam veteran. I've gotten him to tell me a few stories about his time in the service, and some of them are not safe for work. Like, there's, he witnessed some horrible things over there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, couple that with some religious religious oppression when you come home, it makes for a wonderful comedian cocktail. Well, anyways, thank you so much for allowing me to kind of dive a little bit deeper than I normally do with these episodes, Dani. This has been a lot of fun. But as we've been talking, we've been talking a lot about these characters, and we've talked a little bit about the actors and all the people involved. But when you look at something like this and all the people that are involved in bringing something like this to the screen, you always have to ask, as we do every week, lovingly, who do we blame? So this episode was written by Alan McElroy, whose last work on the series was Discovery Season 2, Episode 4, An Obol for Charon, which we discussed with the director of Trek Fest in Riverside, Iowa, Travis Riggin, back on episode 106. And it was also written by Brandon Schultz, whose last work was on Short Trek's Season 2, Episode 5, The Girl Who Made the Stars, which we discussed with the folks from Shuttlepod Show back on episode 87. That's a wonderful...
Yeah.
I absolutely adore the Short Treks. We didn't mention those.
Me too.
Yeah, and it absolutely broke my heart that there aren't more of them. There was a you think of those anthology type series like Twilight Zone or other things, Masters of Horror and stuff like that, where they give a writer and a director, hey, look, you've got X number of minutes on screen, what do you got? And especially when it was Masters of Horror, it's just kind of like, okay, we're on Showtime, so here's your budget, you've got 55 minutes, have fun. Like, no MPAA. And you saw some really messed up stuff come out of it. There was a lot of really good stuff, but it was just kind of like, oh, can you imagine if somebody went to Guillermo del Toro and was like, hey, what could you do with 55 minutes in the Star Trek universe? Like, I would love to see that.
Oh, amazing.
Oh.
Treks is so great with just for supplementing the story. One of my favorite episodes of Short Treks is when Spock and Una get stuck in the turbo lift. And
love it.
And sing I Am the Very Model of Modern Major General, and flash forward years to Ad Astra per Aspera, and which, darn it, that's the state motto of Kentucky, because it was gonna be so many Trekkies' next tattoo until they realized that. To the stars through hardship, come on, all comedians should, anyway. But they actually had Spock call back to that episode of Short Treks.
Yes.
In Una's trial. Spock on the witness stand is asked, was Lieutenant Commander Chin Riley hiding anything? And he said, yes. An affinity for Gilbert and Sullivan musicals.
I even said it as I was sitting there and watching it with my wife, because we were both just glued to the screen, and that question came up, and before he said it, I was like, her love of musicals. And my wife looked at me, and then he said that, I was like, told you. It's such a great moment too, because I mean, don't get me wrong, Leonard Nimoy, an iconic performance as Spock for years and years.
Yeah. Oh,
man, Ethan Peck is knocking it out of the park. He's done such a great job.
unbelievable job. I have always thought it must be the hardest thing in the world to play a Vulcan and not just come across as a jerk, basically.
Yeah.
A lot of Vulcan characters just, but the actor is trying to just, have gone through Kolinar and not have emotions, right? But sometimes you just sound like a jerk.
Yeah.
And I think Ethan Peck and Leonard Nimoy are both particularly good at playing that Vulcan accurately and still being kind of lovable.
Oh yeah. Not to shortchange Zachary Quinto either. Like, he did a great job too for what he was, for his involvement, and it was very short, but like, he did a great job too of like, it's
such
tough.
A challenge for an actor. Yeah.
So I remember it's that first movie where he and Kirk are on the bridge back and forth, and it's really, and finally, like, security take him out and they start escorting him, and of course Kirk starts fighting them off, and you see him drop that nerve pinch on him, drops him, and he's able to deliver the line with the right amount of coldness, but also a level of gotcha, bitch.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Get him off my shit.
Yes.
Like, okay.
let that human emotion come through.
Yes. Oh, so let's dive back in here. This episode was directed by Maha Vervio. I think I said that when I initially mentioned her way back when. I'll say it again here. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not. But her last work on the series was Short Trek Season 1, Episode 1, Runaway. Another really fun episode. Tilly. It's a Tilly episode. Who doesn't love a Tilly episode? We discussed that on episode 100 with, I don't know, some idiot who thinks he knows everything. And then our guest stars, we've got some returning guest stars, very familiar faces at this point. Michelle Yeoh as Georgiou, Ethan Peck as Spock, Alan Van Sprang as Leland / Control. This is actually where I really get into the character of Leland Control, because just so sinister. I love it.
Oh, sinister.
Oh yeah. And of course, Rachel Ann Sherrill is Non. And then one more returning guest star here is Kenrick Green as Mike Burnham, Michael Burnham's dad, we saw him last in Short Trek Season 2, Episode 5, The Girl Who Made the Stars. And then this isn't the first time we're seeing her, but man, we get to see her just chew some scenery here. Sanja Son as Dr. Gabriel Burnham. So just really briefly, she studied English at Brooklyn College, which led her to her first credit, which is actually her first 2 credits. She got spotted doing slam poetry in New York, so she got brought on to this film to act in it. She ended up writing a lot of the movie, if not the entire thing. The 1998 Slam. She played Lauren Bell. Now, that movie actually went on to get 7 different nominations, and from those nominations came 4 wins, including a Golden Camera at the Cannes Film Festival, the Breakthrough Award for Son and her co-star Saul Williams, the Audience Choice Award from the St. Louis International Film Festival, the Bronze Horse from Stockholm Film Festival, and the Grand Jury Prize from Sundance. So it's a decent movie if you're looking for something this weekend. She made appearances in Shaft in 2000 alongside Samuel L. Jackson and Christian Bale, and the entirely improvised Perfume from 2001 alongside Star Trek alum Paul Sorvino. She was in all 60 episodes of The Wire from 2002 to 2008 as Detective Kima Greggs. She was also in 5 episodes of Cold Case, 29 episodes of Body of Proof, and she continued to work in film and television through the 2010s, including 3 episodes of Marvel's Luke Cage in 2016 as Captain Bethany Audrey. And as I mentioned, she popped in there at the end of last week's episode. So this is her second appearance in the franchise, but not her last. We will see her again. So Dani, as we do each week, we ask the question, is this essential viewing? If somebody is sitting down and watching this particular episode, Perpetual Infinity, and they come to this episode, Perpetual Infinity, is this one that they must see, or is this an episode that they can skip?
So one thing about Discovery versus, say, like TNG or Strange New Worlds, it's serialized. Each episode is not self-contained. Like, so for example, I'm trying to get my dad into watching TNG. I can say, okay, watch The Outcast, watch Measure of a Man, et cetera, et cetera. If you're going to watch Discovery, you sort of just have to watch Discovery.
Yeah.
And when you consider the larger Star Trek plotline and sort of how important Captain Pike is to that.
Oh yeah.
And this episode has a place in the story that is Pike ultimately seeing his just mortifying future.
Yeah.
This episode has a place in that. So therefore it has a place in the timeline of another new Trek series. And just in the larger universe overall, and not to mention its place in the progression of the plot of Discovery itself, even though that sort of eventually kind of forks off into its own timeline far off in the future. But so I would say yes, because it's not its own self-contained episode that has some beautiful moral about the principles of the United Federation of Planets, but there's plenty of those, which is great. But there's a lot in this episode, and if you're looking at Star Trek as a whole as a story, then you need to watch this episode for a chunk of story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Aside from the serialized nature, which again, I've never shied away from mentioning that I love that they took a chance and said, you know what, we've done episodic for a long, long time. Let's switch it up a bit. And I think it, turned Star Trek for the first time in ever into a water cooler show where you had to keep up. You had to watch it. Now, in addition to that, if you're really into the story of Michael Burnham, which, I mean, she's the main protagonist of Discovery, so that kind of goes hand in hand. But if you're following her and her family and all of this stuff, this is clearly an essential viewing episode. For me, I love the, dark espionage type things. I'm a big Section 31 fan. So for the dealing with Section 31, which there's a little moment between Tyler and Georgiou of them sort of plotting over the comm badge of, trying to figure out what's going on with Leland. And it's a really fun moment between those actors. Well, they're obviously not on the same set, but kudos to not only the actors, but the editors for making that just seamless and such a really fun moment. But anyways, if you're following the Section 31 stuff, I think it's important. And Pike's story, I don't know that Pike's story really, I feel like it kind of takes a back seat to his overall arc in this particular episode. But But I mean, oh God, just every little turn he gets is like trading card worthy. It's just like, yep, that one, and here comes another one. There it is. But I think this is absolutely essential viewing. Well, Dani, thank you so much. Let's
Pleasure.
Jump right in here to parting thoughts. Here we're going to start wrapping things up, but do you have any parting thoughts to leave about this particular episode, Discovery as a whole, Star Trek as a whole, your Star Trek in comedy, life as it continues to roll on, your experience on this podcast. Any parting thoughts before we go?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I want to like break down a list and give an abbreviated answer to every single thing you just mentioned. Well, this has been
I got the time.
Talking to you has been awesome. At like any opportunity to just nerd out in extreme depth about Star Trek is treasured by me. So this has been awesome, and thank you so much for having me on. This episode, this was a loaded episode, and I feel like we totally could have talked about it for another 5 hours.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
But that's one thing that I love so much about Star Trek. Like my husband and I have had 6-hour-long conversations on how replicator technology would affect our current economy, and how and why that can't happen until we either have World War III or evolve as a species. But the 6-hour-long intellectual version of what I just said, and the fact that a show can do that is awesome.
Yeah.
And inspire humor. I'm trying to think if I have a Star Trek joke I could throw out that's not too dirty, but most of the short ones are the dirty ones.
That's
sorry.
Okay. We love you all the same. Hey, you know what? We'll save that for Patreon. We'll save that for the after show.
Okay.
Well, again, Dani, thank you so much for carving out the time. I know you're on a comedian's schedule in New York, which is much different than the normies out there.
It's almost breakfast time already.
I know, at almost 4 p.m. Well, again, thank you so much, and our best to you as you continue to work in that field. Well, folks, next time we will be joined by my good friend Patrick Cunningham to discuss Discovery Season 2, Episode 12, Through the Valley of Shadows, which is available wherever you watch Star Trek. We support the strike. Dani, what do you have going on? Where can people see you perform? Where can people support the things that you've got going on in the world?
So I just perform somewhere in New York City just about every night. I'm often at the Grizzly Pear Comedy Club, and I do perform at a lot of Star Trek conventions. The next one I have coming up is I can't remember dates. Trek Condoroga in Ticonderoga at the location of the Star Trek set recreations.
Nice.
And that is, I'm about to find out, that is August 18th through 20th. That's happening. So I'm going to be performing there, performing, I think, 25 minutes of probably PG-13 rated Star Trek jokes. I recently performed at Shore Leave Con, and love doing that one every year. But if there's a Trek convention on the East Coast, keep your eyes open for me, or for possibly under the heading of Seriously Nerdy Comedy. My colleague Dave McOwen from DC and I perform at these together, usually cosplaying as Data and 7 of 9. Although my latest cosplay that I think I'm going to lean into is just Orion Pirate Chick.
I saw that the other day on your Instagram. I was like, switching it up a bit. Okay. Yeah. Well,
follow me on Instagram and all that.
Yeah. So where can people find you on the internet?
Definitely Instagram. I'm always posting cosplay photos, and when I remember to, my comedy show schedule, which I obviously love everyone to see. And it's at Dani Riedel Comedy, DANIRIEDEL Comedy. And yeah, I try to keep up with it. I struggle with social media, but I try. I really try. At the very least, there's some pictures of me not wearing very much, painted green from head to toe.
And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in 10 forward.
support us on Patreon and like, rate, review, and share on all your favorite platforms. Feel free to send us your subspace transmissions to computerresumepodcast@gmail.com or at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Computer Resume podcast was created and produced by Mr. Todd A. Davis. Our logo was designed by Will Martin and Justin Bishop. The opening theme was produced by Justin Bishop, and our outro music was provided with permission by Dronode. Additional music was provided by Mr. Todd A. Davis and Gary Horn, and the voice of Computer Resume podcast and executive producer, me, Kat Davis. Hashtag LLAP. We'll see you next time.
Going through a Star Trek. We're doing Star Trek stuff in space. We probably got some phasers and shuttle pods, and we're gonna find a brand new race.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?